Thank you for inviting me to join you tonight.
And welcome to TV47. It's a Gen Z young, TV station, just like you are the youngest cabinet secretary in cabinet at the moment. If you could just tell us, the senator for Nairobi had said, I have never seen this cabinet secretary. Where have you been, engineer?
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer because I've been all over.
Right.
You don't have to be the loudest to be actually working. So you just need to focus on the job at hand and deliver on your mandate. I think that is what matters.
And what
it is not about popularity.
Right.
It is about delivery on your mandate.
All right. And what is important right now is food security. A lot of Kenyans are food insecure at the moment. We import a lot of foods that we consume, which is not the right way to do things, considering Kenya has agriculture as the backbone of its economy. Now, there is a significant amount of acres under irrigation at the moment, around 700,000+ acres, but we are aiming to almost double that number. How exactly are we going to do this?
Irrigation is very key because for too long we have depended on rain-fed agriculture. And I think if you went through the systems we learned in school, there were always those common names, the irrigation schemes, Kenya, Moya, Pokera, and then they're asking you what is it that they grow.
Right.
And this for too long has been ongoing because the focus has been on the national irrigation schemes. And times have changed clearly, climate change and also the rain seasons that we used to have that were really predictable are no longer predictable. Therefore, when farmers plant and they are ready, they have planted and they are now depending on the rain-fed agriculture, that is starting to prove to be very unsustainable. And therefore, we also need to consider that population is growing. By the census in the year 2019, we were around 47 point something million. I'm sure 5 years down the line, 5-6 years down the line, we are past almost 50 million.
Right.
And food is what is keeping me here today.
Right.
You see yourself. If you were hungry, this would have been a different conversation.
Of course. Now, engineer, we have about 85%, almost 80% of our lands being arid and semi-arid.
Right.
Irrigation seems to be the end-all, be-all solution. You have said that, the loudest isn't always the most, productive. Could you just tell us, what are some of the ways that we're ensuring that this arid and semi-arid land is being put into good use?
And that is very unfortunate for Kenya because, as you've clearly stated, we are about 89% arid. To produce on these lands, first we need water storage. Without water, there can't be irrigation. And therefore, we have some key dams that we are building. One of them being Mwache in the coast. We have Dwake that is ongoing here in Makueni. We have Siu Murunyugiza. These are dams that are ongoing. But also we have smaller water retaining structures, water ponds, and all this contribute to food production, especially now that the vast lands in this country cannot produce without irrigation. And now so we are starting a conversation to actually invite young people and actually attract private money, development partners into production, because we're having conversations of Galana Kulalu, which has been ongoing for a while. You need to marry the corporate agribusiness with the community-based agribusiness. And forget not, it is also a devolved function.
Right.
Because once we develop these community irrigation schemes, we must hand over to communities. These communities are under the county government. So the county government also must come up with what we call the CDUs, the County Irrigation Development Units, that actually ensure sustainability, continuance.
Right.
Especially after we develop the big infrastructure and hand over these community schemes to the counties.
Right, engineer. One of the tenements of the Kenya Kwanza government in its manifesto was 100 dams. The president kept on saying it. 100 dams is what we'll have. This is going to be our solution for water scarcity. It's going to be our solution for, you know, the shortcomings that we have had in agriculture. Where exactly are we in the 100 dams project?
The 100 dams project was, the main target was water harvesting. And not more than once I've said that in this country we don't have a problem with water. Right now it's raining, actually outside the office. The studios.
Right.
All that water is heading into the drains. So that was a very clear message of water harvesting. And on this we have classified most of these dams into PPPs, whereby because of the size and the actual cost of doing a big dam, the exchequer or the government of Kenya cannot actually sustain some of these projects considering our fiscal space. I think you're also aware of our fiscal space.
All right.
Now, we have these dams classified under public-private partnerships where we are looking for a proponent to actually invest in doing these projects. These we have dams like Radat that we have put out there to attract investors in this industry. The PPP process is slow. It is not a snap of a finger kind of arrangement,
right,
because a proponent has to do studies out there, feasibility, etc., and then submit a privately initiated proposal to the ministry. Then it goes through the PPP directorate, so it's a lengthy process. Some of them are actually in the process of that. However, the projects that we have ongoing as a ministry, for example, Moache Dam, that are not funded by, that are funded by development partners such as World Bank, and the other dams that we are actually doing, we are fast tracking them to ensure that their completion is on course. And bottom line of this is, as a country, we really need to invest on water storage.
Right.
When do we actually need water? It is during the dry period. When do we actually need this irrigation most? It is during the dry period. So, as a country, I've always said we actually need to be objective about it, and someone has to be deliberate.
Right.
Underline that.
Objective and deliberate. Now,
about water storage.
CS, PPP is a trigger word for a lot of the youth in this country. When they hear PPP, they feel like they're being bamboozled. Now, there's this investment plan that, of course, the ministry is coming up with that is supposed to trigger so much, you know, progress, but there is the private investor factor. How exactly are we consolidating this? So
maybe I start by, because you've said there's this investment vehicle you're coming up with.
Yes.
For quite a while, if you allow me to explain, is that we have been doing uncoordinated irrigation. The mandate of the State Department of Irrigation is, as per the executive order, is first of all to store water and manage floods, because storage of water means managing floods. Secondly, is to use that water to develop infrastructure for irrigation. Thirdly, once the irrigation schemes have been developed, they have a responsibility of managing the national irrigation schemes, and we only have 7 national irrigation schemes. Right. From then, we also have a duty to actually train, capacity build, etc. Now, to your question, as the ministry is doing this, counties are also doing their own small-scale irrigation projects. We have NGOs in this country that set up model farms in different areas of the country, uncoordinated. So, because the ministry has the responsibility of planning, we have come up with what we call NISIP, the National Irrigation Sector Investment Plan. So what is that? Which is this monster we are calling NISIP, as you described it.
What is this animal?
It's not an animal. It's a coherent, systematic plan. First, to solve 2 problems: to orient our focus nationally, incorporating all stakeholders, development partners, the private sector, the ministry, county governments, the farmers, and actually blended financing. To make irrigation coherent, ensure sustainability, and more so, ensure coordination. When all this is achieved, we have targets and budgets. So it's also an investment vehicle. It's a plan to raise the money to achieve our targets. And our targets are ambitious because we have a plan by 2027 to put like almost 1.28 million acres under irrigation. Right now we are past 700,000 acres. When this NISIP was conceived, it has taken time to develop because of participation. All stakeholders in the industry doing irrigation have been consulted. We have been financed by World Bank. We have engaged experts and come up with 5 pathways on how to coordinate all the activities in agriculture, in irrigation, and target to achieve our objectives. As one of the government key agenda is actually to ensure there is food security. And the easiest way to do that is for us doing farming that we're in control of without depending on the heavens. Yeah.
Now, engineer, of course, you said that it's important now to have this coordinated response when it comes to building these dams. And some of these projects have been lacking or have been stagnant for a very long time, even before the Kenya Kwanza government. One of your sentiments in, the bicameral houses was that, the Ukraine war did have some sort of effect on this progress. How exactly did it have an effect? Because it has become quite a meme on social media. What does Ukraine have to do with our dams?
And thank you for asking that question. We were talking about a specific dam, and I think today I again appeared to the Senate to explain the same. That dam between the year 2020 and 2023, we were at foundation stage. And foundation of such huge dams, to put it in perspective, Thuake will be the biggest dam we have as a country. Why? First, it will hold or store around 688 million meter cubic. To find that in liters, multiply by 1,000. So you will have the numbers. And this dam is huge. The length of the embankment is around 1.5 kilometers. That is 1,500 meters. And during foundation, the rock required blasting. And when you talk about blasting, maybe most Kenyans think that we are talking about grenades. So you use explosives. It was part of the contract. There are contracts that allow using of explosives to do blasting, and there are contracts that say don't use explosives. But in this case, use of explosives was allowed to actually break the rock while doing the foundations. Unfortunately, the explosives were being imported from Ukraine. And these explosives, I'm talking about ammonium nitrate. So when there is Ukrainian war, so supplies required was around 600 to 700 tons a month. What we could actually, because of disruption in supply chains, what we could actually procure or supply in that month was between 100, 150 to almost 200. So you see, we have a shortfall of around 400. So the rate of excavation is slowed down. Secondly, during COVID, ammonium nitrate is used in production of oxygen, which was the most required commodity during COVID-19. Oxygen. So those dynamics slowed down the progress of works. And we actually have letters that we wrote both from the ministry and also received from the contractor. You see, when you're doing an engineering project, they actually, when there's an impediment or a challenge that might actually slow the delivery of the project, you put it in writing That is part of the contractual obligations.
Right.
You forewarn the client that we might not deliver on time because of this and this. And we actually have, we have letters written to the Ministry of Mining,
Right.
asking for their support in sourcing these explosives to do our foundations.
Right. Engineer, what's the progress right now? You know, we've talked about how these raw materials were being used in different areas. We know that there might be some sort of impasse between Ukraine and Russia right now. The COVID era is over. When are we getting back to normal programming?
As of now, I think we are past that stage because the blasting only required during excavations. That was done and dusted. The embankment is 99% complete. The actual progress of the dam is at around 94.2% complete. We're only remaining with 6%. And remember, when this wall is done, when the embankment is done, the world dam experts that are very key on safety recommend that you monitor. You see, it's a massive wall of rock filled Panda Mawe for quite substantial amount.
Okay.
You give it time to settle so that until you achieve a settlement rate of less than 5 millimeters a month, then the dam is still settling, and that takes between 6 to 9 months. Then the only remaining works is to do the plastering of the upper side of the wall, the side facing the upstream side that is facing, that is actually where the impoundment will happen. Otherwise the water will be penetrating. So you must do the plastering. If you do the plastering before the dam has actually settled, the plaster cracks.
Right.
So
You're
that's where we are right now.
So you would know.
Now you know you're in my domain. Maybe we can have a conversation. Yeah.
Now, engineer, of course, around last year, your predecessor, Alice Wahome, had said that, you know, the 100 dam project will be actualized through private investors for 1.7 trillion Kenyan shillings. When it comes to NISIP, there are different players who are going to be taking part in this. What are the numbers? How much are we talking?
Before we come to numbers, you need to explain actually the pathways that we have actually developed under NISIP. We have considered 5 pathways. We call them investment avenues.
Right.
One is what we call FLEED, expanded FLEED, farmer-led investments. You see, most of our irrigation is done by farmers, small-scale farmers. When I talk about small-scale farmers, I mean farmers who do between 0.5 hectares to, say, 2 hectares. That is around 1 acre to 5 acres, roughly.
Right.
These farmers, what do they need? What they need is, first of all, they must have the drip lines or the irrigation facilities and infrastructure. And remember, some of them don't have that. They don't have the kits, they don't have the drip lines, and also they don't have the markets. And then there are those without, but they don't have a reliable source of water. That's why we're investing in what we call household ponds.
Right.
So that once we maximize that and ensure that they are efficiently trained to maximize in their small farming capacities, no one is being left behind. We achieve more production.
Right.
That's the first pathway. The second pathway is now the corporate agribusiness way,
Right.
where we are looking at mechanized farming on government land through leasing. Here we are talking about projects like Bura, that we actually commissioned the gravity flow now.
Right.
And we can command 80 to almost 100 acres, 1,000 acres of land. While initially we were commanding just 6,000 acres. This gives an avenue to attract investors, commercial investors, to actually take up land and do commercial farming. This is our biggest target because this is what we are calling private finance.
Right.
A proponent will come up or an investor will come up, invest their money in that farm, in the process create employment, in the process reduce our food deficit and also earn us more exchequer in case we're exporting. The third pathway is to revitalize what we call the arid ASAL areas.
Right.
Arid and semi-arid areas, this is where most of activities that take place there is pastoralism. So if they can produce their subsistence food through water harvesting via lagers. You know, the sand dams,
right,
where you hold water. Are you familiar with those concepts of sand dams?
Well,
we call them lagers in layman terms.
Yes, yes.
So, and also use that water to actually irrigate fodder. That is livestock food, feeds, fodder, correct? So, we also planning to maximize on where we have lagers so that the people, the community around there can actually use that water to do some crop production and also produce fodder. That reduces their mobility in some extent, because now when there is pasture available, do you have to keep moving?
No, of course not.
Because also, no, provision of government services also becomes key, because now we can find them in a centralized position.
Right.
Our children school better when they have stability on residence. Then the fourth is the community programs.
Right.
The community, we call them community irrigation schemes. This is where now the county governments come in very hard. Because once we develop the infrastructure for the community, we hand over this infrastructure, and the ministry does not have enough resources to sustain and actually ensure continuity of all these even small irrigation schemes, because they need operations and maintenance. They will need aggregators. We need to link them with markets out there and actually ensure that they continue producing at optimum even once the infrastructure is done.
Right.
Now we need what we call the CDUs, the County Irrigation Development Units. It's synergy. We develop, the communities run them, but training, capacity building, linking to aggregators is done by the counties.
Now, engineer, what's the lifespan for this particular project? Because again, Kenyans have started, to associate the government projects with a lack of promise keeping. What is the actualization rate? NISIP
is a plan, right? A blueprint, a guide, a compass, you may call it that, for a period of 10 years. So all this is envisioned in a duration of 10 years, where we have concerted effort and put our minds, soul, and everything we have towards the achievement of that.
Okay.
Because the target is to do around 598 billion Kenya shillings. That's what we are trying to attract in terms of the package and kit that we are looking for, the funding we are looking for. And in our projections, the government cannot do like around that 9% of that, which is almost 203 billion. And that's why we are very keen to ensure that we bring everyone on board. Because now private capital means more now than ever. We are talking about food security issues.
Right.
So we are counting on every penny that we can raise. Yeah.
So that baby will come to town.
That is the prayer, and that's the focus.
As we pray for that baby, let's look at a few business news. Now,